Shut up and sit down.
By all means, go for it. Have fun. Just leave me alone.
People are coming together more and more and more and more as the government has been failing us more and more.
I'm against being shitty to people.
You can't research your way into understanding somebody.
One way or another, I'd rather have the fight now.
So what I did there, I was climbing up a long flight of stairs in the State House, and I was huffing and puffing as I was going up the stairs, and I thought to myself, I've got to find some way to remember the people that sent me. And I said, this is it. I'm always going to take the stairs, never take the elevator. And every time I go up the stairs, I'm going to think about the people that sent me. And I have done that religiously every time through 8 years now. I've been there 8 years. And every time I go up the steps, I think about the people that sent me. To me, that has been probably the biggest factor of just reminding me of what I'm there for.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's sad that that's a novel idea, that you would actually like remember that you are representing people and not a system.
But it is so intense down there. They have all kinds of, I mentioned before, psychological processes that they put you through. And they get you, okay, as you're running for election, who are your peers? Okay, what's the voters? It's your volunteers. It's your donors.
Right.
And as after you get elected, there's this process, the peer group shift to say, okay, these were your peers, but now your peers are the other legislators. They're the staffers. They're the lobbyists. These are the people you need to be listening to now. These are the smart people. These have all the answers. And so they have a reception every afternoon and then dinner every evening. And there's all these things that they do. There's a caucus thing where it's this private club. You go into this room and you close the doors and you can talk freely in that room. And they make you feel like family. The first few years I heard, we're all the same family. We're all on the same team. I heard that a lot of times in my first few years there. Toward the end, okay, I was in the caucus for 6 years. I've been a representative for 8 years. I was in the caucus room for 6 years. So do the math here. We'll probably get into that later here. But during that time, I observed in the latter years that they stopped using the terminology like we're all on the same team, because it was becoming apparent that we were not all on the same team.
Yeah, the team sports mentality of politics has always been the part of it that's frustrated me and worried me, and kind of like it kept me out of it for a while. And then, I still got sucked into politics, but through the Libertarian Party.
Right.
And, I did that because I thought, oh, well, there's this team and this team, but we're like the logical group of people that don't play for a team. And then I realized that all politics is still team sports, and I was just putting on a gold jersey instead of a red or a blue one. And I found myself like still in similar ruts of like just cognitive dissonance, where I was like, okay, but you have to vote for the Libertarian because like we need those votes, and like we need ballot access, or we need this, or we need that. And it's the same stuff. And I started to become friends with more insiders in the party instead of like the people at my county. And I started placating bullshit bureaucracy to them. and I realized like, oh, I'm still being one of those, except for I'm not even doing it for any sort of power or influence or anything like that, because it's within the Libertarian Party. So just ended up being for not really, but like the trade-off wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And we sit around and make fun of people that are elected from the other two parties, and meanwhile you're out here getting constitutional carry passed and still pissing off the Republicans just even more than we are. So it sounds like a win-win.
Well, yes. So since you mentioned Libertarian Party, I'm going to go back, if you don't mind, to the early days of the Tea Party. And I'd say this is the first 6 months there. Remember, I was doing the book studies, we were doing the education activism stuff.
Right.
And during those first 6 months, we were just trying to figure out who we were as a Tea Party. And we knew we didn't like the Democrats. Obama had just got elected. We didn't like Obamacare. We didn't like a lot of what he was doing. We knew we didn't like that. But we had just come through the last, the Bush years. And we knew that we didn't like George W. Bush either.
Right.
We didn't like the bailouts. We didn't like the massive spending and stuff from Bush. And so we were like, who are we? I thought for a while we were starting a new party, like the Tea Party.
Yeah.
Okay. Like we were going to actually, do it until we figured it out that, well, in order to be a political party in Indiana, you have to run somebody for Secretary of State, and you have to get the signatures so they can be on the ballot. Massive amount of signatures, and then you have to get 2% of the vote, and then after that you have ballot access for it. And so it's like going to be like a 6-year process. It's like, well, we can't wait for 6 years. Okay. So then we started looking at what are the other alternatives. Well, we already knew we didn't like Democrats. We didn't like Republicans. We looked at the Libertarian Party, and
you can speak
just say
freely.
Okay. we came to the conclusion that they were just the party of losers. Okay, that we would never actually win in the Libertarian Party. So then,
especially back in that would have been what, 08, 09?
09.
Okay,
yeah, 09. Yeah. So it's like, so what are we going to do? And so it was about at the end of that 6 months that we said, okay, the best path forward here is to infiltrate the Republican Party and just try to make the Republicans do, because they were the closest to us, and you could win as a Republican. So I volunteered to be a precinct committeeman for an open precinct, and I got appointed by the county chair. And we really worked closely with the county Republican Party then. So much that when there was an opening for secretary, my wife volunteered for it. And then when the old man didn't run for re-election in 2013, my wife put her name in there, and she got elected Republican county chairman in Elkhart County. So she was county chairman for 4 years, from 2013 to 2017.
It's an interesting 4 years to be a county chair in the Republican Party.
Yes. So, yes, indeed. So my wife was county chairman of the party when I put my name on the ballot. Okay. So that was.
Oh, that sounds like some corruption.
That's perfectly okay in Indiana, because it's not a paid position for county chairman.
Right.
Yeah, it's all volunteer. So yeah, that was the approach that we took with the Tea Party. Now, that being said, I will acknowledge then that the Republican Party did really corrupt's not quite the right word, but they took the Tea Party and just sucked them in, and they got us all excited about all the Republicans. And then a bunch of Republicans won Congress in 2010.
Right.
And now everyone is on that access path where they're serving the politicians now. And it really took away the power of the Tea Party. When we were fighting the establishment, we had real power. But then once we started serving the establishment, the Tea Party in general lost its really power to do anything.
Right. It's interesting that the Tea Party is what brought you into politics, because it's also what brought me into politics for the most part.
You're not old enough.
So I was how old would I have been? I was like 14 in 2010.
You must be a bit older than you look.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm 25 now.
Okay.
So yeah, I was like 14, 15 when the 2012 primaries started rolling around, and I remember watching the Red Wave in 2010 and watching the Tea Party movement and listening to people like Paul Ryan and and I was raised Christian conservative, independent. So both parties kind of suck, but most of the time we vote Republican because they're the good Christian people. We couldn't vote for Obama. That would have been horrible. I remember that. I remember my real first political conversation. I remember getting called racist for supporting McCain instead of Obama. It was like the first thing that I really remember the like WTF that is politics was that race. And then obviously we supported Romney in 2012. And watching that race, I saw him as like a successful businessman that had like stepped into politics after like making a bunch of people's lives better in the private sector. Now he wants to make people's lives better in the public sector, and like still full naivety, still like believed government's a great institution that like, you know, is for the people, because I'm 16. But I watched that happen. I'm like, I want to do that, and that's like actually what got me into politics.
Mitt Romney inspired you to get into politics.
I didn't say that out loud, but it's true. And then Trump comes around 4 years later and ruined the like businessman into politics trajectory plan for everyone for forever. So I can't even like really tell people that like, oh, I wanted to be a successful businessman before I ran for president, because now I sound like Trump. But yeah, Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan was the ticket that actually like made me think like, hey, that's something I might want to do someday.
Okay.
And that,
can I give my thoughts on that race?
Sure.
Okay.
Please do.
So I did not support Mitt Romney.
Okay.
That one. I did not. I think I can say this. Yes, it's public knowledge. I did not vote for him in that race. Gary Johnson had started running as a Republican, and I think he was on like the debate stage, and that was early on in the primary, and that's why I said, okay, Gary Johnson, he's someone I want to watch here. And then it wasn't long after that he dropped out of the Republicans, ran as Libertarian for president, and I kind of liked Gary Johnson and the stuff he stood for, what he said. And so somewhere in there was like some kind of event. And I was kind of active on Twitter back then. And I just tweeted something like, I could vote for Gary Johnson. Well, went on, never thought about it again.
Right.
Okay. More background. So once I decided to run for state rep, my campaign team said, okay, go back and scrub your Facebook, Twitter, get rid of anything that could be misconstrued for anything. And so I did. I went and scrubbed everything. Well, apparently I missed that one tweet because it came out in a postcard.
Oh, wow.
Okay. This was in the last 2 weeks before the primary election in 2014. There was postcard every day. Don't vote for Nisly for something or another. Okay. The first one was treason. Don't vote for Nisly. He wants to tear apart the United States. And then they went on from there. And I'll get back to the Gary Johnson here, but for the treason one,
I'm curious.
Was so the day after Obama got reelected in 2012, there was like these petitions on the White House website to, for each state to peacefully secede from the Union. I don't know if you remember that, but it was every state had, and I heard about it on the radio the next morning, and I looked it up and talked to somebody, looked it up, sent them the link for it. I'm pretty sure I didn't sign it because it's the White House website. I'm not going to give my information to Barack Obama. Okay. But it's like, well, I've got it on my clipboard here. I'd emailed it to somebody. It's like, well, I should do something with it now. What if there's other people that want it? So I just went on Twitter, just pasted it and posted on Twitter. That was it. No commentary, no nothing. Okay. They took that tweet and turned it into a postcard. Treason, don't vote for Nisly. He wants to tear apart the United States. The second postcard was, don't vote for Nisly. He doesn't believe in the Constitution. He can't take the oath of office because he doesn't believe in the Constitution.
How'd they come up to that one?
The same tweet. Because if I want to tear apart the United States, obviously I don't believe in the Constitution.
That's constitutional, though.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't know about your constituents, but these postcards would earn my vote.
Well, actually, after I won 65%, I'm wondering if maybe they actually want
Yeah.
that.
Some people might be a little bit more sympathetic to a national divorce than they people think.
I'll stay. I'm just staying out.
Yeah,
of the
I'll let you
conversation
leave that
right
one
now.
around.
But that gets us to the Gary Johnson postcards. There were at least 2 Gary Johnson postcards.
Wow.
And it was, don't vote for Nisly. He's too liberal and too confused. And they pulled up the tweet that I could vote. I never did say I would vote for Gary Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
I said I could vote for him, but that was the tweet. And so they had 2 full postcards about Gary Johnson. Now, I guarantee you there were about 3 people in the whole district that knew who Gary Johnson was before those postcards hit. And they were all 3 on my campaign team.
Right.
So
I wonder if they might have earned Gary some extra votes in 2016 for you.
yeah, I don't know, but it was definitely an issue in the 2014 race for state rep, District 22 in Indiana.
That's amusing. It's also kind of funny that like you're currently a Republican, I'm currently a Libertarian, but yet I supported Mitt Romney in 2012. You supported Johnson. That's always a good. That's always a good one. Yeah, I didn't learn about Gary until after pretty much all the primaries were done for all 3 parties. So it was pretty much decidedly Clinton, Trump, and I'm like, I'm not either one of those.
Yeah.
And my dad showed me Gary Johnson in the hopes that it would shut me up and make me stop complaining about the government. That didn't work. He thought that if I was happy and like had someone that I liked and wasn't complaining about how shitty these other 2 candidates were, he thought that I would be quiet. And now I have a podcast, so that didn't work out so well for him. So I have a feeling that very few of my viewers actually know what goes into this process. So I'm curious if you can take me through like idea to bill signed. How did constitutional carry become a thing in India?
How did constitutional carry become? Okay, long story. I could go into a lot of details or I can hit the high points. And I will try to hit the high points, but if I start getting sucked into all the details, just stop me and say, write your book some other day.
Okay. Sounds good.
Because there's a lot to this.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to start with the confrontational model of politics. Are you familiar with that at all?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
I do a lot of work with like YAL and Leadership Institute.
Yes, so. Yeah. So Young Americans for Liberty, YAL, they are about the confrontation and mobilization model.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an access model for politics. It works for non-controversial issues. And then there's the confrontation mobilization. And that's what works for controversial issues. And constitutional carry happens to be a controversial issue. Mm-hmm. I don't see why, but apparently it is. Okay, so the model works. We have right to work in Indiana because of the model. We have constitutional carry in Indiana because of the model. It is the way to get stuff done on controversial issues. So the model simply says it starts with the roll call vote. Mm-hmm. You get the ayes and the nays on the issue, and then you figure out who voted wrong, and then you start replacing a few people, and then you do it again, and eventually you've got enough votes to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are, 2020, we got it done. But how did we get there? Okay.
Yeah.
So when I first ran in 2014, I heard about this thing called constitutional carry. I said, hey, it sounds like a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got down there were other people who were already kind of the front lines of that issue. And so I never filed a bill or even co-signed onto a bill for constitutional carry. It's just, looks like we're well on the way and things are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it was in my third years in 2017 that the bill author, the main guy, it should have been the year for it, but in committee, they took constitutional carry and turned it to a summer study committee, which in Indiana it means, yeah, we're just going to spend some time in the summer and try to get all the people together and talk and try to come up with compromises, stuff like that. Usually when you say summer study committee, it's where it goes to die.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So like we were on the precipice, like it was time to get the vote, time to move this thing. And when the author settled for that one and said, I'm okay with the summer study committee, I realized, well, we're not going to get a roll call vote this year. If they go through summer study committee, we probably won't get a vote next year.
Right.
We probably will never get a roll call vote. Okay, so that's my thought processes. Okay. During that time, there was another bill. In fact, it might have been the exact bill that they put the Constitutional Carry Study Committee into.
Mm-hmm.
It also had to do with firearms. So I'm just going to explain the bill a little bit so you can see the genius of what we did. Okay, so the bill was, if a person who is a female and has a protective order against somebody else, they can use that protective order as a license to carry for 60 days to give them time. Good bill, good idea. Right. But then there was this guy right here in Fort Wayne, where we are right now, who called me up and says, I was looking at this bill and I just started striking out words and I think we get constitutional carry here. It's like, if any person doesn't need a permit, and then strike out 60 days, it's forever. Okay, so that's the idea now. And I was like, well, I'd be happy to help with it. I'm happy to second somebody else. I'd be happy to offer it if you need to. Just I'll help out however.
Mm-hmm.
And so the day comes, and they haven't found anybody else to offer to do this amendment. So I'm willing to do it. All we need is a second. In Indiana, if someone makes a motion, you need somebody else to do the second for it.
Right.
So, okay, your job, this is the National Association of Gun Rights that I'm working with here on this. And so they say, well, we'll get you a second. You go ahead and do that. Through the course of the day, we had 6 different people who had agreed to, I actually had a second for it. It gets complicated here because we thought they would rule it out of order, and then we'd have to appeal the ruling of the chair.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I needed the second. I actually had a second on the motion.
Okay.
Bruce Borders had agreed to that. But he said he's not going to go through with this whole appeal thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's thought them taking it too far. But we had 6 people that said they would second me that day. And after the caucus and a whole lot of other stuff happened, the 5 Republicans all said, no, we are not going to do it. But I still had a Democrat who said he would second me. Okay. A pro-gun Democrat. And so, okay, here we go. Here's the plan. So I do the amendment, start talking. Republican rules chairman says I'm out of order because of bill pending. Now, that was the first time we knew what they were going to call me on.
Mm-hmm.
We knew they would do something, but we didn't know which rule they would do.
Right.
So once again, I'm getting into the details here, but it's kind of the drama of this whole thing. So got ruled out of order. The speaker agreed with it. I appealed the ruling of the chair. The guy that had said he would second me is sitting right in front of me, and he didn't say the word second. He was just staring at his computer. Didn't say the word second. So we had all these plans, did all this stuff, and I didn't get the second on that. And I thought I had messed up. Like, I was pretty devastated that time because I thought I hadn't done it right. And it took me a while, but I realized that wasn't my job. It was the National Association for Gun Rights. Mm-hmm. So that was the first one.
Right.
Okay. That was in 2017.
2017?
Yes. Yeah. 2017. So I did an amendment, didn't get the second, didn't get a roll call vote. Mm-hmm. Okay. We need to get the roll call vote. All right. 2018, they did the summer study committee. 2018, no constitutional carry. just nothing.
Right.
Okay, so going into 2019 now. Another kind of a longish story, but that year, so I mentioned the bill pending rule.
Right.
That was what they called on us. Because there was another bill that was constitutional carry. So because mine would have ended up with about the same, even though my amendment didn't have a single word from the constitutional carry bill. In fact, my amendment only struck out words. It didn't add any words.
Right.
Okay. And clearly wasn't bill pending. I was very justified in appealing the ruling that time. Okay. So we get to 2019 and I had actually drafted the bill that year. The National Association had wanted me to file it. And I said, no, it's your job now to find somebody else to do it. And there was somebody else that was going to do it that year. But before he did it, the other guy, the former bill author, came around to him, said, don't do it this year. If we don't have a bill pending, now we can bring it up on an amendment and we can get the roll call vote. And then he came to me because he didn't know my intentions. I wasn't planning on filing, but he said, let's not do it this year. And so he made sure nobody filed constitutional carry that year. So we'll just call this the Jim Lucas plan.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds like a great plan so far.
Okay. So now we're implementing the Jim Lucas plan of not having any bills filed for constitutional carry so we can bring it up on second reading. All right. So we're going, no bills are filed. Okay. It's all perfectly set up. We're going down through the first half of session, and Bruce Waters, the one I had mentioned earlier, he actually filed the amendment for constitutional carry. And then things got really weird. They reassigned it to Ways and Means Committee, and it took like a whole week before it actually made it back onto the calendar again. But his amendment sitting out there for a whole week, and for that whole week, Bruce Waters is just getting bombarded. And they're begging him to not offer this, because it'll kill the bill. It's the underlying bill had good stuff in, like church carry. If a church is on school property while they're having church, you can carry a gun in. And there was a bunch of good stuff in there. And they said, but if you do this amendment, it'll kill the bill. They didn't explain why it would kill the bill. That's another story for another day, right? Unless you want to ask me what it is. So Bruce Waters ended up not offering the amendment in the first half. Now we're in the second half. We got the Senate bills coming over. And I called up the National Association and said, guys, this is the Jim Lucas plan. We have to get the vote, and we don't got anybody to do the amendment. I'll do the amendment again. I had said I'd be the second, but I'll do it even if I'm the first. You find the second, and we'll do this again. So we get the right bill comes through, and the senator had called me up already and said, don't mess with my bill. It's like, we're just going to vote. It might pass, it might not. No big deal.
Right.
We just want the roll call vote. So caucus happens. And after the caucus, I go around to all my usual people who should have wanted to second me. And every one of them said, nope, not going to second you, not going to second you. So I knew I wasn't going to get a second that time. And I called the guy from the National Association and said, hey, I'm not going to get a second. What do we do? And they said, what do you want to do? I said, I would offer this thing anyway. I want to show that there's not a single other person in this room that wants constitutional carry. Bad enough to
actually make it happen.
But leadership.
Yeah.
It was leadership. It was the speaker that didn't want it. And so I got up there, gave the reader my amendment. The speaker asks if there's a second, fails for lack of second. But this time I'm not devastated. 2 years before I was really devastated. This time I was smiling. I was happy because now I had proven and I showed everybody that there's not a single other representative that's willing to take a stand for constitutional carry.
And that was 2019.
That was 2019.
Right?
Okay. In 2020, I filed a constitutional carry bill. This was my first time I actually filed one. And I told the National Association, I'm going to do it one time. You use this now to do whatever you have to do in the elections to get somebody else elected, because we need a second so that we can get the roll call vote. And so around the state then, going into the 2020 cycle, around the state, it was, let's get a second for Nisly.
That's a good campaign.
Yes. And so, yeah, Young Americans for Liberty had come in. They were working with a candidate that was running against the floor leader.
Oh,
so Matt Lehman is the floor leader, the Republican floor leader, lives just south of Fort Wayne here. And he had told me in 2019 that he would never vote for constitutional carry. Okay. And then he picks up this primary challenge. And guess what the election is about? Constitutional carry. Yes. And Young Americans for Liberty comes in and does their thing. And in the end, Matt Lehman won the election. But there was some behavior modification that happened. Okay. So Taylor Ish lost that race. Okay. Matt Lehman won. But in that same cycle, there was another gentleman on the south side of Indianapolis named John Jacob that won. Okay. He had also taken on an incumbent Republican. She got caucused in. She had never actually got elected. He won by 71 votes in the primary. Wow. In a Republican district. So he became the nominee in the fall and won easily in the fall. So now, okay, I've got two branches to this right now. So John Jacob is elected and he owes the establishment nothing. Right. Except maybe pain and suffering. Okay. So there's that piece of it, and we'll come back to that. But let's go back to the constitutional carry now. Constitutional carry, 2021 session comes around. Matt Lehman, the floor leader, is the first co-author on the constitutional carry bill. Nice.
Nice. Learned his lesson. There we go.
Yes. So even in a losing cause, in losing an election, we flipped the floor leader to supporting it. Going from 1 year before, he said he would not ever vote for it, to actually being a co-author on it.
Right.
So now we kind of hit that tipping point. Like the first time it came up for a roll call vote was in the 2021 session, and it passed the House easily. But then it died in the Senate. Now there was a database in the bill, even though the author to this day swears there was no database in there, but there was a database in there of people who were prohibited from carrying constitutionally. So it died in the Senate. This year came through the House, no database, good, clean constitutional carry bill, easily passed the House, went to the Senate. Senate screwed with it, did a bunch of stuff, but it was eligible in conference committee. So the last day of session, it got moved to a different bill, conference committee report, constitutional carry, passes easily, the House and the Senate, goes to the governor. The governor has openly said he doesn't like constitutional carry, like constitutional carry. But when his 10 days were up, he had 10 days to sign or veto. And when the 10 days were up, he signed it. So they got the message. And it was all, I would like to say, it was all because of me pushing for it those two times and letting people know where the other members of the House were on the issue. And that's how we got it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we fail a lot to do, just as people, but then especially those of us within politics, a lot of times all it takes to unseat, or not all it takes, but all it should take to unseat someone is just informing their constituency of who they really are. Yeah. And we don't go that tactic very often. It's not a smear campaign. It's not negative politics. It's just, hey,
it's just about the voting record.
Yeah.
Yep.
Check out the voting record.
When I ran in 2014, all we talked about, well, we talked all the good stuff about Nisly,
Mm-hmm.
but we also pointed out the voting record and how the former representative, how she wasn't representing the people, wasn't representing the district. Now, she said we were running an ugly campaign, but the reality was their side was doing the ugly campaign. It wasn't her that was sending out the treason postcard and the Gary Johnson postcards. It was the Indiana Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
They were just doing it on her behalf.
Yeah, it's interesting to cry dirty campaign when you're sending out those kinds of postcards. Man.
Yeah.
It's also kind of amusing that someone would consider it if you think your constituents being informed of your voting record is an attack.
Yeah.
You should probably change your voting record. Like that
Yes,
shouldn't
indeed.
be. That should be something you're proud of.
Yeah.
You should have like a link to that on your campaign website. Just be like, "This is how well I've represented you. Keep me around."
Yeah.
But that's obviously not a thing. So I wasn't expecting both organizations to go back quite as far into that story. But I'm curious how
Which both organizations.
National Association for Gun Rights and then Young Americans for Liberty. You mentioned both of them, and I'm curious how they got brought into the mix. Was National Association already working on constitutional carry here before you were elected?
Yeah. So I don't know when they got involved in the state. I know that the former bill author that I have referred to a few times now, he was working with them. He had been through the faculty training.
Okay.
He knew the model. He knows how it works, right?
And then just didn't
But
do it.
then when he compromised,
Mhm.
and then I stepped in to do that night yet. That night, right after the National Association put up a post on Facebook saying that the rules chairman that had made the point of order, that my amendment was out of order, they said, okay, he's the anti-gun guy now. And Jim Lucas could not control himself because he's this social media freak. And he went and started defending Jerry Torr on Facebook. And then the National Association put text messages. This is all public stuff. So this all happened live on Facebook. They put the text message where Jim Lucas, when asked, would he second Nisly if he feels the ruling of the chair? He was, hell yes. So remember the six that I was talking about? He was one of those that day. So,
Nice.
so after that, he didn't really like the National Association for Gun Rights. He may have taken all his Nagger gear and cut it up or burned it or blown it up with tannerite or something like that. But he cut ties with the National Association at that point.
Okay.
Yeah. So they were working in Indiana at least by 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And I don't know how far before that.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have anything else on National Association? Because I was going to jump to Young Americans for Liberty.
Go.
Okay. So Young Americans for Liberty, I knew about them even back in the Tea Party years. I think I was at one of their state conventions like in 2013 when they were here in Indiana. So I was aware of Young Americans for Liberty. And then it was in the fall of 2018 that I got invited to this Coalition of Liberty Legislators for Yale. So Yale had just changed their focus from national to state in 2017. And there was this coalition of liberty legislators that existed, but then they got Yale took over that organization. And I got invited to it. There were about 25 of us in 2018. They had just had a few victories by then. Operation Win at the Door was just kicking off then. And they told us their goal is 250 liberty legislators by 2022. Very clear already back in 18. That was what they were going to do. So
They definitely made up some ground in those 4 years.
yes, indeed. We're at see, there's 170-ish now. And so by the end of this year, they will be at 250. They'll be way past that.
Yeah.
So
that's exciting.
Yeah. And they're getting a bunch of them right here in Indiana. We don't know how many yet because it's up to the voters to decide how many.
Mm-hmm.
But Young Americans for Liberty is very active here in Indiana right now.
That's awesome.
Yep. So hang on. I got to be careful here.
Yeah.
It's Make Liberty Win PAC, which split from Young Americans for Liberty at the beginning of the year. They're two separate entities now. Mm-hmm. So when I refer to Young Americans for Liberty, I still think of them as one and the same, but the PAC, Make Liberty Win PAC, is a different organization now. So I got to be careful here that I don't get confused here.
Yeah, I still lump them all together.
But it was the Hazlitt, the Coalition of Liberty Legislators I was referring to, got renamed the Hazlitt Coalition. Okay, and that's the Liberty Legislators. That has been a lifesaver for me. It has changed my attitude to realize that there are other people around the country that are doing the same thing as me. That David Eastman is up in Alaska doing this, and Eric Mortensen is up in Minnesota, and Jonathan Hill is in South Carolina, and all four of us that I've mentioned have all got kicked out of the Republican caucus in our states. And it's that gives me hope to realize, I'm not just one person here in Indiana, but there's other people going through the same thing and doing the same thing across the country. And then to have them coming in and doing the door knocking and getting other legislators in, it's this is really cool. Yeah. So just to wrap up the constitutional carry, how their involvement here was Hazlitt Action, which is actual Young Americans for Liberty. Their action, so their C4 organization, did send door knockers into Indiana earlier this year. And they were pounding the doors, especially in the Senate. The House, we passed out the first week before Hazlitt Action landed in Indiana. It was out of the House.
Oh, wow.
So, but they were pounding the pavement in the districts of the senators that were holding it up. And I am pretty sure that this other senators took note of what was going on. And Young Americans for Liberty had a huge impact in that. And getting it done, I will give them absolute credit for getting it done. And I will add a caveat there that it wasn't just the thing, it was the threat of the thing. It was not that they're willing to do it now, but what else are we willing to do if you don't pass it?
Right. And we'll be knocking on those same doors for your opponent next year.
Yes, indeed. They proved what they were able and willing to do. And that's why constitutional carry passed.
That's awesome. I know when the Hazlitt Action program started, I actually got pitched by one of the national staffers to be on one of the first teams for the Hazlitt Action, and I ended up not working with Yao that coming couple of months at all, so I didn't do that program. But it was a really cool idea in my mind of we're not knocking for candidates. We're not, you don't have to worry about your candidate saying something stupid or being an idiot. I've knocked doors for candidates that I then met a couple weeks later, and I'm like, why did I make people vote for you? I'm not a fan. But with Hazlitt Action, it's there's no way for constitutional carry to say something dumb on Twitter tomorrow. It's just an issue, and the idea of not only are you pushing forward a specific thing, you're also making a more engaged voting population with it. Where when you're knocking for candidates, most people go and vote. You target the people who are going to go and vote anyway. So you're not really changing their personality, the way that they look at politics that much when just doing normal door knocking. With Hazlitt Action, you're saying, hey, call your legislator, have this conversation with them, have this conversation with your friends and family, tell them to call their legislatures. That's that's a change in lifestyle that I've talked to people that have gotten engaged because of an issue like that, that sticks with them. They sometimes make a bond with their legislator or vehemently hate their legislator after that, and start working primary campaigns against them. But that's something that'll actually get people more engaged and move towards what I think is a better version of American politics. Yeah. So it's kind of two birds with one stone thing with that I appreciate. It's great to see Yal come through and make these kinds of things happen, though. I wanted to ask those questions about Nagger and Yal, because I think, especially in the Liberty community specifically, there's a huge separation between politicians and organizations that you don't see in the other two parties very much. We're used to people like NRA and Republicans are hand in hand. Fight for 15 is hand in hand with Democrats always. But within the Liberty movement, there's, especially when talking about libertarian politicians specifically, but even the Liberty Republicans that we like, I'm seeing not the kind of communication that we need happening beforehand to make the kind of things like Yal coming in and helping knock doors with Hazlitt Action to actually push your bill over the edge. I don't see enough of that communication. And so I wanted to kind of get to how those connections got made and how they got brought in, because I think a lot of states could use the help from some of these organizations. We have little PACs and grassroots action organizations, and even Libertarian Party affiliates that would love to knock doors for something like constitutional carry. Just get volunteers out on a Saturday to do that. We just don't know where to send them and what the timing is and that kind of stuff. So how do we try to solve that problem and get that communication better, make other states look more like Indiana?
It's a good question. I don't know that I've got an answer for you. I mean, we're kind of we're winging it. We're learning on the fly as we go here. We just know that the model has proven itself to work. The confrontational mobilization model. It has proven itself to work on lots of issues, and it will continue to work.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've been listening a lot to. I was working in Nebraska last week, and my driver that I was working with is a big fan of Eric Brakey, and so we were listening to his. I think I listened to more episodes of his podcast last week than I have the entire rest of the time he's had a podcast combined. But he talks a lot, obviously, about the confrontational model of politics and what they're doing there at Yale, and he has a really good way of breaking it down. It makes sense, and I like the way that you kind of broke them out at the beginning, that if it's a non-confrontational issue, there's a completely different way of doing it, where you're making friends and you're playing nice. And then when it is confrontational, you go this way. We're seeing it work. We have constitutional carry now 24.
We were 24.
Wow.
Yes.
We're almost halfway there.
Yeah. Ohio and Mississippi beat us to it this year.
And then Alabama.
Or was it Alabama? It was Alabama or Mississippi.
I think Alabama.
Okay.
Because actually a couple of my friends were down there with Hazlitt Action.
Okay. Hazlitt Action was down there too. I didn't know about that.
Yep.
Yes. They're getting it done.
They really are. And I worked for them in 2020 and 2021, and there was a lot of people on the ground then. But I swear the team has almost doubled since then. Okay. It's insane how many states they're doing things in at the same time. It's really encouraging to see people engaged.
So think about it from this perspective, that the model works on every issue and in every place. Okay. So, we've seen it work with right to work. We've seen it work with constitutional carry. Well, what else is there? Universal school choice. I'm hoping that's one to take on real soon here in Indiana. And what is your issue? What is your issue? this model can work and will work with your issue.
Right. So we need to start using this model for cannabis legalization in some states.
Well, that's
it.
That's it. It's not being used in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody in Indiana is using the confrontational model on it. I'm fully supportive of legalizing marijuana, especially for medicinal use. And I think that if we would actually get a vote on it in the House, it passed the House. Like it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
4 years ago, I had a primary opponent in southern Kosciuszko County. So we live in Kosciuszko County.
Right.
So the two representatives, there are 2 seats that split Kosciuszko County.
Okay. Makes sense.
Okay. And we each had a primary opponent. So they had all 4 of us in the stage in Kosciuszko County. Now, this is the most conservative Bible Belt county in the state.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is where Mitt Romney had the highest percentage of votes. Okay. So here we are in Kosciuszko County, and the 2 incumbents and the 2 challengers, all 4 of us agreed on medical marijuana should be legalized in Indiana.
Wow. And it's still not.
And it's not, because nobody's running the model. Nobody's working the model.
Mm-hmm.
If there would be an outside organization working the model, I could work with them. But I tend to do my stuff in the State House when I've got outside support for it.
Right.
If I don't have outside support, why would I put my neck out there for something like that?
Yeah. Which I think, goes back to my last question about how do we better facilitate that kind of support? Because it's I'm sure that there's a lot of state reps across the country just kind of sitting there going I'd love to sponsor a constitutional carry bill, but I don't know. I don't know if I have the support. I don't have the lobbying efforts in my state. I don't have enough connections to make it actually happen. That a group like Nugg could come in and make it work. I definitely think on the topic of cannabis, there's this issue within that movement of it's such a no-brainer that people think that they shouldn't have to fight for it anymore. That we shouldn't have to go through something like a roll call vote and then elections and then like a 4-year process. Like we should just be able to people into it, and it doesn't work. It's just never going to work. It kind of worked in some states where it's a blue enough state that they just do what they're told, but it's not going to work in a red state like this. You can't just it's a no-brainer. We should. That doesn't make any difference.
So to all my viewers out here from Indiana, here's the opportunity. I'm presenting it to you. We had the roll call vote this year on medical marijuana.
Right.
It's kind of obscure vote, but there's a vote. And if you would just activate, even during this cycle that we're in right now, you can get organized. You can find the 3% of the people that agree with you. Doesn't take that hard. It's not that hard. If you would turn it into an issue in this election, we would get something changed next year. The problem is nobody's making it an issue in this election.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do have a decently sized following from Indiana, thanks to people like Will Henry and Liz Cochlear and other people like that. So
Will and
if you're
Liz.
watching, definitely, listen to this man, and let's make some. I'll be here for a month and a half, so I can help you guys get started.
Okay. Hey, that coincides pretty close to our primary election here.
There you go.
You're libertarian, but
I mean,
but you can get involved in Republican.
I do actually quite regularly at this point. I've actually this year resigned all of my official positions within the party because I don't like conflict of interest things, and I don't feel like putting my time and energy into necessarily building a party structure when I think that time and energy could be put into
the liberty movement.
Doing things. Yeah,
I hope that's what you were going to say.
Yeah,
where you're going with it. We call it the liberty movement here. That's going on.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be party specific. Yeah. I don't want it to be party specific. Even as a big L party member, I've been in the party since the beginning of 2017. I am a libertarian. I don't want a libertarian government. I don't want a libertarian liberty movement. I want a liberty movement that understands that you should work outside of party politics, and that, maybe my district is too blue or too red, and I'm going to run in one of the other parties, or I'm going to run as a green because they have more support in my area or something. I'm okay with people doing whatever it is they have to do to make a difference. And I'm especially at this point just disillusioned to party politics in general. It's, I mentioned earlier, it's just another Jersey.
I'll mention something here that, okay, I've got two directions I want to go with this one. Okay, but first of all, even though the Libertarian Party is not a major party in Indiana yet here, they do provide, there's one function that they do, and it's to cause, say, a Republican to lose or a Democrat to lose. But by taking up the gap between the Republican and the Democrat, you can cause a bad Republican to lose. And I'm okay with that.
Right.
I would rather have a Democrat, I'm speaking as a Republican here. So I would rather have a Democrat in office and who they are, than have a Republican that acts like they're a good person and doesn't do the right thing.
Right. 100%. I would much rather be working with someone who's honest.
Yeah.
When I ran for office in 2019, the majority of my support was from outright communists, authoritarian, top right or top left of the quadrant, straight up authoritarian commies. Because I was working with them on environmental policy and criminal justice reform policy. My opponent was bought and paid for by police unions and didn't care about environmental policy in any way, shape, or form. And so, I was their best choice. They liked the libertarian answer to a bunch of the environmental stuff, which a lot of people are surprised by, which I just said, hey, let's lead by example and make the government run green. And in New York City, when the government owns about a quarter to a third of the city itself, that's a big difference. And so, I would much rather somebody that's I'm a commie. I think that we should disband money and a classless, moneyless society is what I want. Tell me that to my face. Don't pretend to be a libertarian and then actually be a commie. That's
so I've got another libertarian story for you. The second one here. So back in 2011, this was right to work. Remember that I mentioned that before. During the whole right to work fight, the Democrats in the Indiana House walked out and left the state. They went to Illinois for 5 weeks. Wow. Okay. Longest legislative walkout in the nation's history. Okay. Over right to work here in Indiana. Okay. But during that time when they walked out, I was just getting to know the process and stuff and learning about the Libertarian Party. And I thought at that time, I can't wait until the day when the Libertarian Party can replace the Democrat Party as the minority party in Indiana. And to me, it was just kind of this weird thinking thing. And yet what I'm seeing is it is moving that direction. With Donald Rainwater's run for governor 2 years ago, he got 13% of the vote across the state. Yeah. In my county, he got more votes than the Democrat did in Kosciuszko County. In 32 counties in Indiana. 32 of the 92 counties, Donald Rainwater got more votes than the Democrat did. Okay. We are on the brink of that dream that I had back then in 2011. It's on the brink of happening. I don't know if it'll happen sooner or it'll happen later, but I do think we're a lot closer to that time now.
Yeah. I think,
and when I say minority party, I'm not trying to, yes, the Libertarian Party could become the majority party, but you probably have to become a minority party first.
Right. No, we're going to take out the Republican Party first somehow in Indiana. I honestly, I talk a lot about Indiana and Pennsylvania are the two states that I talk the most about on my show because Indiana, we're seeing, like you're talking about, just a statewide, statewide elections going very large percentages. And Pennsylvania, kind of the opposite effect of like the tiny elections, we're actually seeing wins. So we have about 250, or no, what is it? It's 230, I think, elected libertarians in the state of Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
Because they targeted a bunch of small races, most of them uncontested, where the controlling county parties in Pennsylvania actually usually just appoint someone. They intentionally leave the ballot blank and then just appoint someone so they don't have to go through an election. And so the Libertarian Party has, for the last about 4 years, been targeting explicitly those elections that are blank on the ballot. And so a bunch of people are getting elected completely unopposed as libertarians.
Wow.
And then, we're able to focus on the ones that are contested, and that's turned into a lot of wins. But here in Indiana, I think that even this year with James Seniak for Senate, there's a chance of him taking second place.
Wow.
I'm saying that as an outsider, looking into Indiana, but he's got a really solid team together. He's got most of the Rainwater people behind him still, and the party's only grown in the last 2 years, and they have probably the best state chair in the entire country in Evan McMahon. So I'm excited to see what the LP here does here in Indiana. It's one of the states that continues to give me hope for the partisan politics. But at this point, I'm just more issues based for the most part. So I want to see, especially cannabis legalization in some of the states that should be on the brink, like Indiana. You guys are pretty much an island of prohibition. That makes no sense. Same as with New Hampshire. Also, one of the most libertarian states in the country. They're an island of prohibition. They're the only state out there that still has it criminalized. So I'm trying to see some of that stuff pop off. And it's really encouraging to see the party continue to grow and kind of mold.
Can I tell you a story about the Libertarian Party?
Yes, please do.
This is directly in legislation here. So after Donald Rainwater had his pretty good run there 2 years ago, it was amazing. The next year, there was a bill that came through the House that said that minor parties, like the Libertarian Party, it's the only one that actually fit the description, had to get 500 signatures in each of the 9 congressional districts. So in Indiana, Republicans and Democrats who have a primary system, in order to make the ballot in the primary, you have to show that you have support statewide. And you do that by getting 500 signatures of registered voters in each of the 9 congressional districts. Okay. That's the way it is. Okay. The Libertarians don't have a primary. When the Secretary of State, when they top 10% in the Secretary of State's race, then they get a primary too, paid for by the taxpayers.
Of course.
Okay. But until then, in the 2% to 10%, they have a convention. Okay. So there's no requirement for signatures. But now this bill comes through and it makes it out of elections committee and it's headed to the floor. And I sat down with the chairman and he said, getting the signatures, that's not all that bad. We could live with that. Probably it'd be helpful because now the candidates would have to get out early and get their signatures in order to be on the ballot.
Right.
Okay, so that's not a big deal. But here's the problem. Who judges the signatures? Okay, it's the county election boards. Who makes up the county election boards? Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're turning this over to your political enemies to make the decision if you can be on the ballot. And he said, hey, it would be all we want is just a member on each of those election boards. And then if there's any disputes, it goes to the Indiana Election Commission in Indianapolis. And guess who that's made up of? Republicans and Democrats. Yes. So if there's a dispute, can we expect fairness there? And they said, even if we're not a major party like the others, we don't need 2 seats like they each have 2 seats. They just want 1 seat. Okay. So, 1 member on the Indiana Election Commission, 1 member on each county election board. That's all. That's my amendment. That was my amendment. Okay. I did have another amendment there. And it just changed the 500 to 498 because our current senator, U.S. senator, he only had 498 signatures in one of the congressional districts back in 2016. But they allowed him on, even though he didn't meet the 500 vote threshold.
Interesting.
And so it's like, well, if it works for Republicans, it should work for everybody. So I had a second amendment that just changed the 500 to 498, just in practice, to keep in the practice of the Indiana Election Commission. Well, so I filed the amendments, but the bill never actually got called down on seconds. It just died then.
Gee, I wonder why. I wonder if they were a little bit worried that we might catch on to some of the other crap they're doing in those election commissions.
So anyway, that's one of the bills that I was a part of killing in the 2021 session. We killed a lot of other bills too.
Nice.
Well, I think we have a total of 8 bills that were killed directly because of an amendment that I put on, or John Jacob, the other guy that I mentioned earlier. Yeah.
It's funny. I actually almost worked on John Jacob's campaign.
Oh, really?
When I first started working for YAL, we were in just outside of South Bend, Indiana, for like a training where like 5 different races worth of people like all came together for the training, and then we all split off. And so a bunch of them went to John's campaign, and I went up into Michigan to work for Chase Turner, who we got him through the primary, and then he ended up losing in the general. But I trained with all of John's team that ended up going there. And for a second, there was like a day there where I thought I was going to actually end up working in Indiana. And then they're like, nope, you're in Michigan. Like, okay, cool. That was a whole shift around as we started back up in 2020 after kind of everyone went home and, COVID kind of killed all of politics or everything. Just trying to like get everybody back into the groove was a fun time at YAL HQ, that's for sure. But yeah, some awesome liberty legislators came out of that 2020 race. I'm excited. So one last question: what is your favorite part about being a state rep? Super cheesy question.
Wow. Okay, so it's representing the people that sent me there. And it might sound cliche, but it really is the best part because I know where my power comes from. Okay. There is not a single person in the state house, except maybe a couple interns, that could vote for me. Okay. Nobody else can vote for me down there.
Right.
And why would I treat them as my boss? No, my boss is the people back home. And realizing where my power comes from. It's from the people back home that elected me. That gives me that's where the fun comes in walking into the state house and saying, I don't care what you guys think. I care about what the people back home think. And in doing that, it frees you up to do a lot of stuff. The second most enjoyable thing is not being in the Republican caucus room. Now, technically, I have not been kicked out of the Republican caucus. The speaker made that very clear. I'm still a Republican. I'm still on the ballot as a Republican. Even this time, I'm on the ballot as a Republican. But I was just not invited to the meetings, to the private meetings. The speaker described it as his private club, and he can invite whoever he wants to these meetings.
I'm always a fan of freedom of association.
Fair enough. You know what? And John Jacob, this other guy that I talked about, they had the same request for him, that he doesn't attend their private club meetings. So the two of us essentially operated as a minority caucus. And the rules of the House are really meant to protect the rights of the minority. And so we use the rules to accomplish the goals that we wanted to accomplish. More fun. I highly recommend it. Any of you that want to run for office, not being in the Republican caucus is a good thing. I highly recommend it. I've had more fun these last 2 years than all the 6 years before.
It definitely sounds like a lot more fun than being beholden. How to explain a little bit more the rules of how the minority caucus thing works? How does that help?
The rules of the House are there to protect the minority, so the majority can't just trample over it, because with 51 votes you can pass anything,
right?
Okay, but it gives the rules of the House are set so the minority has the opportunity to have input. So all the committee structure that we have, the chairmen are all appointed by the Speaker of the House, and they're all members of the majority party, unless the Speaker's nice and gives the Democrat one, which in a few years that I was there, they had the token Democrat chairman in a committee where they didn't send anything to, because the Speaker assigned stuff to committees.
Right.
Okay. So, he would only send stuff to that committee that was safe. Okay. So, but really the chairman structure, everything is whoever the majority is has control over all that stuff. So the rules now are in place to allow the minority to have input. So there's things like minority report. You can do a minority committee report. You can, on second reading, every bill goes through 3 readings, but on the second reading is when any member can offer any amendment to any bill. Okay. So the appeal of the ruling of the chair, that is, if the chairman just wants to, say, we don't want to hear your thing, we don't want to talk about your thing today, they can just rule out of order. Okay. And they do.
Oh yeah,
they do. Okay. But then it's that appeal of the ruling of the chair, which then goes to a roll call vote. So there's, those are a few of the examples of how the rules are set in place so the minority isn't just trampled. And so the super minority caucus that we developed, we were able to use those rules that are made for the minority and able to force roll call votes. And in doing that, we were able to accomplish a bunch of stuff and also set up the roll calls so that now all the candidates around the state of Indiana can use this in this election cycle.
That's awesome. It seems like you've kind of found your way into a almost best of both worlds scenario of, you're still getting the win of being a Republican. Yeah. You're still actually getting elected, but you're not beholden to the party. You don't have to sit in their private little, circle jerk fests, and you get to actually do what you want to do. And I like the way you keep bringing up like the remembering who sent you. You really do make it sound like a fun gig. Most of the time when I talk to elected officials, it's like I walk away going, I never want to run for office again. Like, nope, don't want to deal with all that stress. Don't want to deal with hearings and rules and readings, and nope, I'm good. You're I think the first one I've talked to that actually makes it sound like a fun gig.
Hey, I'm having a lot of fun.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, Curt, thank you so much for coming on. This was a blast.
This was great. Thanks for having me over here.
My
hey,
pleasure.
Welcome to Indiana. I don't know if I told you that at the beginning of the show, but good to have you here for 6 weeks here.
Thank you. I'm really enjoying Fort Wayne. I really enjoyed Nebraska too. That shocked me. I was in Omaha, Nebraska. It was actually like a way nicer city than I was expecting it to be, and had a lot of fun. So far, Fort Wayne has been extremely welcoming and super fun.
Good.
I like this gig and getting to travel, because there's a lot of states that I would have just written off completely. It's like, why would I go to Indiana? Like, but you actually show up, and then it's fun, and there's a lot of great people here.
Hey, I used to have this line that I want Indiana to be like Texas when it grows up. And I've changed that this year. This year, I'm saying I want Indiana to be the kind of place that Texas wants to be when it grows up.
There you go. That would be nice.
Yes.
I was there earlier this year too. That's a whole other situation. Their politics down there are that I got a copy, or I saw a copy of the primary ballot for the Republican Party in West Houston, and it was 4 pages that are about yay big. Front and back, because there are that many candidates for all of the elections. The election I was working was a 5-way state house primary. The Democrats had 3 candidates for the same election. Congress was like a 4-way race. It's just nuts what's going on in Texas right now. There's too many people running for office.
Yeah. Well,
it's a little bit nuts.
We got a lot of that happening in Indiana too. Our page on the Secretary of State's website that lists everyone in every office is like 250 pages this year. Last year it was like 100, or 2 years ago it was like 100 pages. So we definitely have the people coming out here in Indiana.
Nice.
Here's a stat that I like to throw out. Republicans in the House in Indiana that are running for re-election, 40% of them have a primary opponent this year.
That's not a fun number for.
Now, I have been accused of recruiting these candidates. Okay. Just to set the record straight, I have not recruited a single one of them. I've inspired them. Not all of them, I don't even know who they all are, but a lot of them have come to me, had called me, through the last 2 years, got in contact with me and said, I want to run for state rep because I want to come there and do what you're doing.
That's awesome.
Yes.
You're not going to be a minority caucus for much longer. You could get where New Hampshire is, where the Liberty Caucus makes up a majority of the Republican Party, which makes up a majority of the state house, giving them a lot of control, which is fun. They've been having some fun over there.
Those days are coming.
All right. I look forward to it. Guys, if you want to find out more about Mr. Nisly here and what he's doing, the link is in the description below for his campaign website. If you live in the area, you can volunteer. If you don't live in the area, donate, help out, check all that out. All the other links are below as well. So if you want to check out Nugg of Knowledge and get your monthly Delta 8 disposable cartridges, if you want to check out Harrison Kemp for governor of Maine, that link is also down there as one of my wonderful sponsors. And as always, like, share, and tell your friends how awesome we actually have people representing us. Like, this is a real thing that exists. I know a lot of you guys are probably disillusioned to any elected official, so I'm here telling you that there is hope. So I appreciate you giving us hope.
Yes, indeed. Hey, glad to be able to do it.
Thanks again. Guys, we'll be back here tomorrow night with Larry Sharp at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, keep up the fight. And